Well, as I indicated, the court, there's probably at least 50-plus letters the court has reviewed, both in support of Ms. Cober as well as individuals who had personal experience with her in terms of dog rescuing, in terms of being in the house where these dogs were taken from. The court also has read and reread the report by Dr. Coretto, PhD, who's a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm a human being, so when the first thing when I look at this case is in the pretrial motions, the court was able to review the videos inside the house, pictures. The video I think was a little more helpful because it kind of puts you there. And the first thing that kind of shocked me was as soon as the doors open, there's all these dogs in there. And the first thing is I've owned a dog my entire life. My kids have rabbits. We have I've owned birds in my life, and I'm an animal lover. And I think I recognize although animals are property under the law, I think there's a more of a connection. My kids ride horses, so there's a connection there. The first thing is anger. Like, how could somebody not know that this was bad? This is bad. There's one of the dogs that struck me was in a crate that was too small for it. I think it was like a lab or maybe a golden retriever lab mix. And it's that emotional side. And then the thing for this court is, and I've always tried to do this even in private practice, was I recognition of I'm not a doctor, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a plumber, I'm not an electrician. There's certain things that I don't know. There's expertise I don't have. And so, for me, I look at, okay, what is going on here? And I think one of the biggest things I wanted after Ms. Cober pled, and even when there was discussions before she pled, I really would like to get a real detailed psychological analysis on this person to try to figure out, is this a cruel thing? Is this somebody getting some kind of sick pleasure out of these animals, to torturing them? Is this something financial? Is this something that somebody's trying to get a financial benefit out of, neglecting animals? And the psychological profile that was done by Dr. Coretto was very insightful. And also the court is in a unique position, unlike members of the public, to look at, okay, is this really financial? And what's really clear to me, at least, is this was not done for financial gain. All the evidence in front of me shows that it actually was a financial detriment to Ms. Cober to do that. I don't know what fees she was taking in, or I do know what fees she was taking in, but certainly wouldn't have covered the cost. In addition, Ms. Cober was sleeping amongst this. There is a bed inside this house where there is animal waste and just stuff everywhere, barely room to move around, and she's sleeping in this. And so somebody, I would think somebody who is meant to do this maliciously would not put themselves in this environment. So the court looked at this psychological evaluation to figure out, okay, what exactly going on here? And just quoting part of it, and not specifically to Ms. Cober, although there's a diagnosis of animal hoarding by Dr. Coretto, and then it says, there is no, I'm quoting from the report, there is no DSM-5 diagnosis specific to animal hoarding. The Hoarding of Animals Research Consortium identifies the following characteristics as common to all animal hoarders. First, the accumulation of numerous animals, which has overwhelmed that person's ability to provide even minimal standards of nutrition, sanitation, and veterinarian care. Two, failure to acknowledge the deteriorating condition of the animals, including disease, starvation, and even death. And the household environment, severe overcrowding, very unsanitary conditions. And three, failure to recognize the negative effect of the collection on their own health and well-being and on that of other household members. Since researchers have found that there are several traits that are common among individuals with animal hoarding disorder. One is the belief that they are saving and caring for animals, and another is the compulsive continuation of acquiring more animals. Both of these persist despite evidence that they are providing inadequate care. The disorder impairs insight and judgment. The court needs to take into consideration 4 primary things when imposing a sentence. It's a likelihood or potential that the offender could be reformed, the need to protect society, the penalty or consequence appropriate to the offender's contact, and the goal of deterring others from similar conduct. Unlike a violent offense, the sentence imposed, I don't think would necessarily deter, a jail sentence would necessarily deter Ms. Cober from reoffending, because this is a compulsive disorder. It's a significant psychological disorder that needs to be addressed. The jail sentence, in my opinion, based on, and not my opinion, but based on the counselors, would not serve the goal of deterring others from similar conduct, or others similarly situated to Ms. Cober are going to engage in this sort of behavior compulsively without the regard for themselves or their personal health. Very clearly that they would continue to do this despite the threat of penalty. When the court looks at Ms. Cober's record, she has a minimal criminal history, and she's age 44 years old. The sentencing guidelines in this particular case, they're advisory guidelines at this point, but they're 0 to 17 months. Mr. Hedges cites the law correctly. The state of Michigan, our legislature, engaged in criminal justice reform a couple years back, and they established a sentencing guideline structure that provides a presumption of no jail if the guideline top range is under 18 months, unless the court finds reasonable grounds to do so. This charge is over 25 animals. I think the sentencing guidelines do adequately take into consideration all the factors in this case. So the court does find that there is a need to protect society from Ms. Cober at this stage. Normally the court would want an offender to take significant responsibility for their actions. It's one of the things when a lot of young people come in here, it's, you want them to say, look, I recognize what's wrong here, I recognize I did wrong. I think Ms. Cober has taken some responsibility, certainly not as much as I think I would like or anybody else would, but given the psychological disorder she is suffering from, there has not been really any treatment at this point in time. The court would not expect her to come in here and just completely fall on the sword. If she did that based on the court's reading of the psychological profile, I think I would find it disingenuous, quite frankly, because the individuals engaging in this kind of behavior, it takes a very long time. Ms. Coletto also indicates there's a very, very high recidivism rate for this, and that is concerning to the court. So the court feels the best sentence to meet all of the goals in this particular case would be to impose a significant term of probation. It's the highest under Michigan law that the court would give. So the court is going to impose a probationary term of 5 years. The court's going to adopt the conditions listed on page 2 of the report. The court is going to order you to serve 100 hours of community service, Ms. Cober. The court is going to order that you not possess or own any animals for the term of the probation. The court is going to require you to engage in counseling, similar to the type recommended by Ms. Dr. Coretto. The court is going to order you to provide any counselor that you engage with a copy of this report, because I think it's very insightful. Hopefully Dr. Coretto would make herself available to the counselor, but I think the court we need to find a counselor who is tailored to this particular mental disorder. So that is going to be an order of the court. The court's going to order you to serve 2 days in jail, credit for 2 days you've already served. There is a $130 crime victim rights assessment, $30 probation oversight fees, $68 state cost, and $450 court cost. The rehabilitative goals of probation are to find a counselor that fits your particular mental health needs, to engage in that counseling, to follow all recommendations of that counselor. The court's going to rehabilitative goals: continue maintaining your legitimate employment, making regular payments of restitution. In regards to the restitution amounts, the court has received some documentation. My understanding is there's still some documentation that needs to be exchanged among the parties. It's not surprising, given that's happened. Typically, the parties want to sit down and look over. If there is not an agreement, then certainly either Mr. Hedges or Mr. Coop, you can ask the court for a restitution hearing. I'm going to reserve restitution for 60 days. We just got to schedule a hearing sometime in that time. Okay. So the court has read the report. There is some suggestion that the contact with animals would be beneficial to Ms. Cober's psychological needs. There was a portion from the report regarding this connection with animals that someone who's an animal hoarder may have, and it says a common pathway for someone to become an animal hoarder is that a child growing up in a chaotic environment fails to make a secure attachment to the untrustworthy adults and instead develops dysfunctional bonds with the animals, which provide a conflict-free relationship and a way to meet their needs of feeling valued. I think that maybe Ms. Cober has a better connection with animals than she even does with people sometimes. But understanding that, this is a disorder that we need to get a hang on, and I think the court is going to order no contact with animals until Ms. Cober at least engages in the counseling for at least a 30 to 60 day window, and the court receives some kind of report about her level of engagement. I want to see this counseling started to get some assurances that there's some kind of treatment, or at least beginning stages, before the court allows contact with animals. Ms. Cober, I don't think you would intentionally hurt an animal. I don't think that. But I think that, like many people who come in front of me, they suffer from a mental condition. And unfortunately, it causes them to do things that are negative to the people around them and often to themselves. That should not be something you're ashamed of. There are a lot of people who have mental disorders, and they come in front of me and they're in jail because they've had contact with the police or something like that. It's something that you need to look at and be honest with yourself about and say, okay, how can I address this? And I think that, at least based on what Dr. Coretto indicated, I think you have the ability to lead a healthy life without any kind of mental distress or run-ins with the law, basically, for having too many animals or fall back into this. Now, you heard Mr. Coop. He indicates the recidivism rate he's seeing is 100%. I think Dr. Coretto, it's not 100%, but it's close. But that means that you have the opportunity to move beyond this and hopefully not fall back into this behavior, but it's going to take a lot of work on your part, and I hope you do engage in that. I mean, the court has you on probation for 5 years, and I would absolutely love it for you to overcome this. And obviously the biggest concern for me is making sure you engage in counseling, and the second biggest concern for me is making sure you make these individuals whole in terms of restitution. That is a huge thing for this court, to make victims whole. So that is also something I understand that you're working, there's a lot of bills, but I look at regular payments and restitution. Whatever you're able to do, as long as it's a regular payment, that's what the court wants you to do. So I hope you engage in counseling. I'm not completely foreclosing the opportunity for you to have contact with animals, okay? But I need some assurances that you're engaged in counseling and this counseling is making some sort of impact before I let that happen. So that's the sentence of the court. You have a right to file an application.
May I ask for some additional conditions or bring up some additional conditions? Sure. People would ask that the probation department and or local law enforcement with connection with probation be allowed to do unannounced random home checks to ensure that she doesn't have dogs in the residence. I'd also like that she has to identify a residence to probation and be sure that she's staying at that residence. Because a lot of times, there'll be, let's say she identifies this residence or identifies her boyfriend's residence as her primary and keeps all the dogs over here. That's not uncommon to see in hoarding cases. And I also ask for, in order, that she not be allowed to leave the state without prior approval and providing where she's going, what she's doing through probation, because she has a history of adopting dogs out of state. And so I would ask for those conditions to also be added, Your Honor. Thank you.
Any input on that, Mr. Hedges?
I'm not sure, I mean, generally, she needs permission of her probation officer to the state anyhow, and I think that's sufficient, but I don't think we need an additional recommendation or requirement in that regard. The part about, you know, having the police to be able to come over at any hour, any time, or something like that. I mean, maybe some reasonable. It seems overly invasive for somebody that's already been through what she's been through. Or if the court does decide to impose that, I would ask that have a a time limit on it for maybe the first 30 days or something like that. But for her to be subject to that kind of invasion in her personal life for 5 years is, I think, really overstretching.
Okay. Agent Brown, I'm going to authorize you to have the ability to do unannounced visits within your discretion. I'm not going to allow any law enforcement officer. I think that's a little too heavy-handed to let any law enforcement. Agent Brown typically, in a lot of cases, has the ability to go to the houses. And in his discretion, Agent Brown, if you feel that there's a concern or if somebody calls and says, hey, they saw her with an animal or even for any reason, obviously you want to keep that to daytime hours. I don't think you're in typical the habit of going over at night anyway, just because there's a lot of risks associated with that. So I will give them discretion as almost any agent or any probationer that they can certainly go to their house and drop them or do whatever they need to do. So. And Mr. Coop, certainly if your office or victim services receives a report of potentially owning animals, I'd ask you to make that known to the court, and certainly the court will further instruct Mr. Brown. So I'm believing when regular probationers, if I get reports of them engaging in behavior, I take a look at them to make sure everything's done appropriately. So. All right, so Ms. Cober, you have a right to file an application for leave to appeal your conviction and sentence. If you're financially unable to retain an attorney, will be appointed to a public expense. Request for assistance to a lawyer must be made within 42 days from today's date. Clerk is handing you a form that you must complete and return to court in that 42 days if you wish to request the appointment of an attorney on appeal. Agent Brown, when do you want her to meet with you?
This afternoon at 1:30.
Okay, so Ms. Cober, you need to report the probation office at 1:30 this afternoon.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Yes.
Restitution is reserved, so there was none ordered at this time.
None ordered at this time, but reserved for 60 days.
Oh, thank you.
Yep. All right. We're adjourned.